Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for staying for the last session. I'm the man between you and your cocktail or beer or whatever you're going to have, so I'll be very crisp and prompt and hopefully get the message across as well as take some of the questions here. So just wanted to give you a quick introduction of myself. With Cisco, I worked for 12 years across many functions, and my last position was looking at a worldwide service provider sales. So I basically focused on multi-tenant environment, how to monetize, how to create a business plan, how to actually underpin it with financial model, and also understand lay of the land when it came to managed services, translating pretty well to the cloud computing as we know today. You heard about cloud computing in the guise of what we are talking about is SPI model here, software, platform, and infrastructure as a service. And I plan to focus on infrastructure as a service today, and within that, how to create a secure multi-tenant environment with some flavor of what offers are out there, how much money is being made, and how much customer attachment is actually going on with that. So first and foremost, how many of you have actually heard about VCE? A few of you. VCE stands for Virtual Computing Environment, not quite VMware, Cisco, and EMC, but those are the parents, so that helps. But the focus is really on two things. When we talk about cloud, virtualization, and so on and so forth, there are 4 stages that we essentially talk about pertinent to IT services. First, you virtualize all the resources that there are, namely storage, network, and compute. Then you integrate them. So first virtualize, then integrate this. And what becomes of that is a converged infrastructure. Some workloads or some application would come from where they are and stay in converged infrastructure, and that's it. That's where they would live because of the dependencies that are embedded in application architecture. However, after hitting the integrated stage, allowing converged infrastructure, there would be a level of automation that will take place. Greg talked about at length about automation. And then automation will actually give you ability to scale up and scale out. And that's what makes the cloud, right? So you have virtualize, integrate, automate, and then cloud. So first, we talk about converged infrastructure, and then we talk about cloud computing. And again, not all the workload would need to reach cloud. The way VCE proposition has come about is basically making this either converged infrastructure or cloud journey that you are about to take, making it beneficial from cost perspective, as well at the same time giving you the IT agility and flexibility based on best of breed companies. So you talk about Cisco networking, in the networking realm, Cisco is number 1. We talk about EMC, they are the market leader in storage. And virtualization, as we know, VMware is a market leader by far today. Combining these 3 areas and strengths that each company has, VCE tries to give you a solution, a product actually, that basically is known as Vblock. So Vblock fundamentally changes the way IT services are actually delivered to you. Now we know cloud computing changes the way businesses can buy IT, but with Vblock, instead of receiving 300 brown boxes on your shipping and delivery area, you actually get 2 8-feet tall racks with all the chassis installed. The cards are not in the chassis, they are in a separate box. You get that and you install that, and basically you have a fully functioning, you plug it in the power, and you have a fully functioning infrastructure as a service environment. This is a very powerful argument. What you get is, with Vblock and VCE, is all the 3 best of breed companies that there are. They obviously continue to innovate in their respective areas. The idea is looking into, gleaning into that roadmap, and then allowing to have those innovations already come in the guise of a nicely packaged platform to you very quickly. Right? So now if a cool feature that we talked about, NPS, Greg talked about that network position system, when it comes out, how would you roll it out in your network? Would it work with some of the other things that are installed? That would be a lot of work that you would have to do. Instead of doing that, having that on a platform like a Vblock, would allow you to take advantage. So time to value for each innovation that is coming from each parent would be much quicker for you. At the same time, it's a pre-engineered, pre-integrated, and validated solution. So what does that mean? Pre-engineered means that instead of taking those 300 boxes, now you have a couple of racks to deal with. What goes behind putting those racks together is very valuable. 1,500 plus testing hours that are spent in a lab actually allow you to make sure that a firmware that is running on that B200 or B250 UCS blade is actually compliant with the Vblock solution or the Vmax solution that you have on the storage side that is compliant with vSphere 4.x that you are installing. So this is, and the biggest point is that the way you start dealing or architectural design, implementation, or operational point of view, the point of beginning is a VM. You have to figure out a size of that VM for your application and then start at that level versus trying to figure out what software is going to be installed where and what cable is going to go where. So again, very powerful proposition here. What are some of the things that are important to you from public sector perspective? In fact, public sector very increasingly is becoming a provider of a kind, right? So let me offer that a point of view here and say, in a provider's eye, a couple of things are bread and butter. Multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy brings shared infrastructure. So as we heard from the last speaker, security and privacy become big issues to think about and tackle. The other one is service steering. Service steering is quite complex as well. Not all applications are made equally, but at the same time, not all applications actually have need same class of treatment. Typically, from a business environment perspective, there would be a tier of applications rather, that would be classified as business critical. After that, you'd have a set of important applications. After that, you'd have a class that is best effort applications. Following that would be recreational, like Facebook and so on and so forth. And then you'd have a malicious application. So typically, you'd have those 5 classes that you deal with. A level of service tiering allowing those application class characteristics to match in your data center and on your WAN network, again, is something that is very important to you. So from that, we'll see how cloud computing is impacting all the entities and businesses. First and foremost, for service providers, you heard that Telstra has a Cisco-powered cloud, and OBS over here, Colt is one of the big customers. For service providers, this is a new revenue-generating opportunity. But at the same time, they are delivering a two-sided model, B2B and a C2B, right? Business to business and a consumer to business by providing, I have some examples coming for you, by providing this infrastructure as a service environment. Following that, for enterprises, it's all about IT agility and flexibility. We talked about scaling up and scaling out, how you can actually make that happen and create IT efficiencies. There is a Gartner quote that is floating around since 18 months or so now, that 70 to 80% of the cost that is required to run a data center is redundant, right? You don't need to spend that much money, and a lot of it is attributed to power as well. So for enterprises, it's important to increase the IT efficiency, but at the same time, getting their IT folks not let them bog down into break fix, but allowing them to focus on applications that would allow the business to meet that top charter, right? A top line objective. So those are the couple of things that are important to large enterprises. For public sector, for you guys, right, a segment near and dear to your heart, cost efficiency of sharing IT resources is very important. And I have some real world example that I'll share in the next slide. The other one is meeting citizens' ability to share information in a seamless way. Again, we heard about from the VXI session, the user experience is of paramount importance. How to make sure that the users of your information are getting the information they need in a seamless way. For commercial businesses, this is a different ballgame in as much as they never even had access to such type of infrastructure. They never even had an ability to run a type of infrastructure that can run certain type of application, let's say CRM, that would allow them, or ERP, that would allow them to have a close customer contact, customer tracking, or allow them to compete with upper tier business. So they love cloud computing. For a fixed cost, they can go out and buy IT services that will meet their business objective. And consumers, right? Consumers, again, we all have photos and movies and music and so on and so forth to store. So we use and back it up and so on and so forth. So wearing the consumer hat, we also need that cloud service. In fact, a quick trivia question: what was the latest consumer cloud that was announced in past 2 weeks by a big vendor? Any takers? iCloud, exactly. I'll buy you a beer later. So, again, it is pervasive, but again, from your perspective, from public sector pervasive, very important, and let's see some of the real-world evidence. There was a mention of Vivek Kundra, right? Vivek Kundra is a CIO to Obama, so very prestigious position. In fact, first CIO in the US for the government, right? So for the president. He basically kickstarted a set of cloud project resulting in real cost savings. And I have some examples here for you. First and foremost, look at this. Cloud email migration for a GSA. 15 million savings, 17,000 users migrated. But important point here is 17 different email systems combined. 17 different agencies were using their own email system. So a lot of replication. Remember that cost saving and sharing of resources really becomes true over here. I really like this Army one because Army needed this specific IT service. They went out and followed the process and got the quotes in. $1 million quote came in, right? Versus they could do this in $54,000, right? So same IT service is provided for a fraction of a cost. I like this Department of Agriculture one as well. $27 million saving, right? And 120,000 users migrated. Another one is about recovery accountability. If you're wondering what happened in 2008, late 2008, 2009, stimulus packages were issued by the various government, especially in this case, US government. What is that money doing right now? If you wanted to find out, you log on to recovery.gov. Recovery.gov, Vivek put that out on the cloud, and it is actually saving $750,000. Another couple of examples that would connect the picture, connect the dots, finish the circle. USA.gov and data.gov. These are the two sites that run on Terramark Cloud. Terramark Cloud is running today on Vblock. So, Cisco technology, EMC technology, VMware. So if you want to check out how it actually looks and feels, go ahead and test drive those sites, USA.gov and data.gov. Following that, how would you, now that you know that this is not just some hype, there is real cost savings available here, how would you go about selecting the top 5 infrastructure as a service set? So here is the findings that I have put together for you. Basic offer would give you compute as a service, right? Compute as a service, every time you buy a compute as a service, you have to have storage as a service accompanying that. Why? Before you run the VM, you need to store that image. And after you finish running that VM, you actually have manipulated some data with the application that ran on that VM. You store that data, the modified data. So you need some more storage space. So that's where we are. You have compute as a service and a storage as a service together with that. However, if we were talking about 18 months ago or 2 years ago, I would give you a lot of color around compute as a service, right? But today, a lot of offers from service providers' point of view are out there in the marketplace as well. From that, what SPs did was this. Instead of giving just plain vanilla compute as a service to the sysadmin and say, you figure out what you are going to run on it, they went one level up and basically put an application front on top of it. What does that mean? instead of buying compute as a service, you can start buying, let's say, BCDR, Business Continuity Disaster Recovery. By the way, Business Continuity Disaster Recovery has a new name today, and that is IT Service Continuity Management. So what happened? What happened really was the way businesses are buying VM, businesses would turn around and look into that data center and say, we need 300 servers on a yearly basis at any rate, so let's get those. However, for the month of June and July, we need 75 more. And for the month of December and January, we need 100 more. So what they started doing is, instead of running hot-cold configurations for the data center, they started running hot-warm or hot-hot. And when they needed to peak out of that 300, they dipped into the other set that they were running. So above and beyond, they were, if it's a disaster recovery service, you need to carry out regular testing and make sure that those VMs would come with the right application at the right time when you need them within the specified time frame. So they went ahead and said, okay, instead of incurring cost for those extra 75 and 100 servers, we'll get it from our pool. So that's your IT Service Continuity Management. Dev test environment. Now, dev test has always been a very low-hanging fruit, right? So again, I would encourage you to look at that. And we heard previously that dev test is, if you ask any CIO, and if you ask that CIO and say, do you think your users, your employees are actually using a cloud service? And if that CIO says no, he probably does not have a very good idea about what's going on in his organization. I'll give you a real-life example. Last year, about autumn time, I visited a service provider in Australia, and basically that CIO was asked the same question in a forum where the C-type audience was meeting with us. The CIO basically turned around and said, no, I don't have any users that use cloud. And CFO goes, hang on, I have been looking at where we are spending our money on back of employees' Amex, American Express credit card. And there is a regular monthly charge that is going from a lot of these folks to Amazon.com. I don't think all of our employees are buying this many books. And if he did, when he did some investigation, sure enough, they were all swiping the credit card and running VM as and when they needed, because the IT was not so quick in giving them the type of VM they needed for dev test type of work, right? So dev test is a low-hanging fruit that you can actually, and the pattern is suitable, right? The pattern is that when a dev is happening, you need machines, you do some work, and then you perhaps release those machines. Test comes in and has a similar set of machines, do their work, and then provide feedback to dev, and then they go in that cycle. So you need infrastructure, you work on it, and then you release that back in the pool. That pattern is very important. Another example I wanted to give, you saw the slide in last presenter's slide deck, SkyTab. SkyTab basically is providing dev test type of environment. So what they do is, if a dev team is in the US and test team is in India, they provide this front portal whereby dev team can go and do coding and leave a gold image in a repository together with the resources that are being used. Now, given the time difference, a follow-the-sun model can be in place, and test team can come online, take the gold image, and say, OK, this is the image that we need to do our testing on, do the test, find the bugs, report it back, and then leave the image back for the developers. So this is what SkyTab does. They have no infrastructure as a service. They actually get infrastructure from one of the Cisco customers, VCE customer called Savis. Savis provides them white label service. So every time SkyTab goes out and sells dev test service, Savis gets a nice healthy cut, right? So again, for you to think about, not only you can establish yourself, for your agency a type of dev test environment, but you can do, you can help out other agencies or show them to how to run a pilot or something of that nature. VDI, I think the gentleman who talked about VDI made a pretty good case, VXI actually, that VDI is a compelling environment to have today. And then the last one is about, depending on the type of work that you are in, if high HPC, high performance computing is something that you are undertaking. Do that. If some sort of campaigns are run from your environment, then from your agency, then you can talk about gaming like infrastructure. Final point on this slide is compute as a service. Two specific ways to do it. Right. One way is, I call it Savi's way because that's how they did it. Small, medium, and large. Amazon has the same model. Small, compute as a service, medium, and large. Comes in 5 flavors. Medium and large come in high memory, high CPU. Versus the other model, I call it Terramark model because, by the way, I've been working with those guys for more than 2 years, so they were one of the first ones to come out with these models. Terramark has something called pools model. They give you 50 CPUs, they give you 500 gig of memory, and they give you 500 terabyte of storage space. Mr. Sysadmin, now it's your job to figure out how the application is going to behave on a specific VM, craft that VM, and get to work. Right? So those are the two different types of model to offer compute as a service. By the way, if you go for the resource pool model, you have to have a very good portal. What Terramark has is a sort of swim lanes like this. You can have a production swim lane, dev swim lane, test swim lane. And if a machine that is running in production swim lane, let's say it's a web service is running on that machine, if there's a marketing campaign going on, and if that server starts running hot, very easily you can double click on that machine or right click on that machine, copy it, and then share the workload, and then make sure that that server is not running hot anymore. So again, you need, this is, by the way, easier said than done, right? You need this fantastic award-winning portal that Terramark has, but that's the difference that you have to sort of bear in mind. By the way, today, if you are trying to do the same, you don't have a luxury of spending a lot of money and time to come up with such portal. You have to buy portal products that are available out there, orchestration products that are available out there, and then the secret sauce that you would have is how you combine them together, right? So once within your constituents, as a public sector company, acting in a provider's guise, who would be the type of users that you would see? We always think about customers and businesses from like a small, less than 99 employees, 250 employees, 1,000 employees, and so on and so forth. What cloud is doing is creating two different classes of users. The top class is called informal IT buyers, and the bottom one is called formal IT buyers. Formal IT buyers are really the ones that treat cloud like outsourcing, right? They want a procurement process. They want contract. They want 3 years contract. They want service level agreement. They want to pass audit. Versus these guys are the credit card jockeys, in as much as swipe credit card, get an email, username, password, log on, VM comes up, do your work, get going. If you have an issue, they don't want to talk to anybody. They would rather ask or post that question on a community, get the answer, and get going, right? So very different behavior. And believe me, this is going back to that CFO's point. These guys will bypass IT operations. So, not only your CIO, your CFO needs to be wary of how these users are going to use the cloud. And how would you treat both of these classes of users or categories of users? Well, you need to focus on these guys because this is the type of, as an IT department, this is the work that you have been doing, right? Versus quite often you can let these users know by carrying out a lunch and learn or a brown bag type of event and say, look, we have a sandbox class virtual machine. It's not a production class, no SLAs, but we have it. Come and spin up your VM, run an application on it. Don't go out, right? Because once you start going out in as much as over the internet on a public cloud provider space, you are actually compromising security and other aspects of business. So make sure that you offer something that is appealing to those guys. By the way, these guys are a big believer in self-service, right? Go on a portal and basically start up your VM and start working. Cisco actually has an internal cloud called CITES, Cisco IT Elastic Systems Environment. Again, appealing to the DevOps community, where they need to do DevOps type of work. Mileage varies in as much as over on the informal IT buyer side, you really have a sandbox class environment and you don't really pay much for it. Versus on this side, it's a contract or subscription game, right? Quite often I get a question asked how businesses are going to buy their cloud computing offers, infrastructure as a service offers. They are always going to buy in conjunction with, they would know that they need 300 servers. They would predict that in advance, right? Because they can look over their shoulder, count the servers that are sitting in the data center and say, this is how many we need. And then for every single peak that they have, they'll basically use pay as you go, right? Because with subscription, if you predict in advance, I'll share some pricing models with you. You actually can see you pay a lot less. So, combination of this is how business would actually consume the IT. So now let's talk about trusted multi-tenancy. Couple of things to bear in mind. Public agencies as well as SPs need to reuse your infrastructure in a way that you can be efficient and, in service provider's point of view, make money out of it, right? Monetize these assets. But at the same time, you have to be able to deliver a broad array of services. So, instead of going and categorizing them in a minutia detail, let me offer two big items: service assurance and tenant management and control, the typical Coke and Pepsi scenario, right? I should be able to offer a type of service that is acceptable to both of these tenants on my shared infrastructure, and I should be able to make sure that they are completely segregated, right? To offer them privacy, to secure separation, and at the same time provide them with availability, high availability as well. Security and compliance would come from a point of view that whatever business sector that they are in, business vertical they are in, they need to abide by that. Retail would be compliant to PCI, financial to Sarbanes-Oxley, health to HIPAA, and so on and so forth. So first, how do you scale? How do you create scalability? Not flexibility. Flexibility comes later. How do you create scalability? A quick, again, trivia question would be, how many % of outages do you think are caused by human error, fat fingering, configuration or something like that? Any takers? Any answers? 60%. Yeah. Another beer, please. It's about 80%. It's huge. 80% of the outages have come. So when you have outage, it's not necessarily that you are under attack. You need to check whether there is a configuration change and so on and so forth. And that's really something to take seriously and see, can I create a standard way that I can take the requirements in and consistently deploy those requirements on our shared infrastructure for both of these clients, Coke and Pepsi. Take the requirement in the same way, map them to different templates that we have created on different resources, and then deploy it consistently, right? And create this environment that is actually template-based. So you can repeat it, right? Without template, trying to do a swivel chair is going to consume a lot of time, introduce a lot of errors, and you will not have consistency. So one environment, one VM deployed for Coke on one day may look different from another VM that is deployed for Coke the next day. So you can get rid of those configuration error and non-compliance environment by following this template-based approach. The way you go about doing that in this environment is, so that's one, right? You can now create a scalability. But how about flexibility, whereby development, you don't need a big VM, right? You don't need a lot of memory, a lot of CPU. Test you do, because you are running lots of other scenarios. So even dev and test, you can separate out and say, look, my dev and test is going to be separate. QA is going to be even different from that. And then production. Typically in the IT service lifecycle, you start with dev, then you have test, QA, pre-production, production, and DR, right? So within that, I'm just taking example that in your dev, you're going to require virtualization that is shared. QA, again, shared is fine. Production, need dedicated, right? Because this is perhaps business critical or important workload. Same thing for storage, right? Small and medium would do for development and QA respectively. But For production, I need large, and so on and so forth, right? So how do you go about creating environment where you can consistently have all of these components configured with a specific a set of attributes, right? So scalability, now this is what is going to get you flexibility in a way that you can create provisioning profile with classes bronze, silver, and gold, or bronze, silver, and gold may be sometimes difficult to map directly to the type of application. So you can go for those application classes that I mentioned: business critical, important, best effort, recreation, and malicious, right? And you can create those and do the same thing across the different environments. And now you have a customizable, reusable, and reliable, as well as quick and easy environment to set up. So again, this is all about simplifying. Cloud computing, I think you heard all day today, is a complex system. You are putting it together for your constituents, how to simplify it. So this is all the conversation in that direction. Now, let's talk about multi-tenancy in one aspect, right? You can talk about multi-tenancy in compute, network, storage, and then how they all be combined together. Given the time that we have available today, let me just focus on compute and network layers. And first and foremost, you have unified fabric extender. As you saw, 96 cable coming out of one blade this morning, and getting that simplified in the VXI example that we saw, getting simplified by 4 to 6 strands of fiber. That's what we are talking about. We have a 10 gig lossless Ethernet fabric available from Cisco. Right? So gigabit Ethernet fabric that is available from Cisco. So now imagine your compute where you have a CPU and memory. You run application there. Imagine your obviously data need to reside somewhere else. That would be on the storage. Between this, you'd have a fiber channel or some sort of unified storage protocol that would be running. Let's say if it's a transactional database like Oracle. For each query that is getting executed, you need to fetch a piece of data, bring it back, work on it, and store it. Right? A lot of IOPS are created. By creating this unified fabric extender, you are allowing that IOPS to enhance the performance. Right? So now, how would you segregate those Coke and Pepsi requirement in this converged infrastructure? By using virtualized adapters. Right? Instead of having a one server with 6 different adapters, physical server with physical adapters and 6 cables going out and using 6 different switch ports, what you are doing is having the same type of segregation in virtual environment. And that's what you get with unified fabric and virtual adapter. And then we saw with service profile, you can scale out, right? Allows scalability. Extended memory we saw as well. Quite often with applications, what you have to do is licensing is dependent on number of CPUs that you use. But application doesn't really need more CPU. Some applications won't need more CPU. They would need more memory. So you cut down on your licensing costs, but still have the same performance. So that's what you get over here. And on back of it, let me introduce you the concept of 1000V. Yeah, 1000V is a network, virtual network switch. Has any one of you played with 1000V? No, you can download it and for 90 days trial and definitely play with it. It just patches in like your a patch on your vSphere, vCenter environment. So as if you are doing a patching for vCenter environment, you can just have 1000V. And what it gives you really is this secure separation and a data protection. So let's say you have a Coke and Pepsi. Within Coke, you have one virtualized data center environment, a container, and then you have multiple applications running, some needing firewall, some not needing firewall. What 1000V would allow you to do is have different ESX cluster, right? Remember, we said you need to have divisions like dev and QA and production. Let's say if this is like a e-commerce site, this is your web server for tenant 1, and this is your database server for the same tenant. You need to put them on a different ESX, right? And then still be able to provide this secure segmentation. Customer comes on the portal like Amazon.com, gets a trolley, shopping cart, starts putting things in it. They would be all going in over here. At one point in time, they stop doing filling of the shopping cart and then want to pay, they would come over here, right? So they would be able to do that level of segmentation by having different VLANs. Obviously, you are all familiar with the concept of VLAN. So by allowing different VLANs, one for web services, one for database services, but still having that in a distributed fashion applied with 1000V would allow you to get this secure separation. Another cool feature is vPath. And again, vPath basically allows you to do one thing. Currently, take a switch. What does a switch have? A supervisor and switch ports, typically, right? What would you do with that? Supervisor is always going to govern where which ports are going to receive the traffic and so on and so forth. If there was a specific module in the switch, that's, and then you can stack up these different modules, and a packet comes in, gets switched from port A to port B. If it needs to be subjected to certain QoS, certain security, all those things would happen within the switch before it actually goes out. vPath streamlines that, meaning that if this is the type of environment you have, and if a packet is coming from here and going there and then going back, for the first time, it would go through the normal process of finding out what is where by MAC lookup and things of that nature. But if vPath is in place, then what it would do is cache that flow here for you for the duration. And then for the second packet of the same flow, you'll be able to just use that cache path and enhance the performance. Second important feature is if there are firewall modules, if there are load balancing modules, and so on and so forth, what vPath does is gets the packet, and then if that packet is subjected to those services, firewalling, load balancing, network analysis, and so on and so forth, it would execute all of them before it lets the packet out. So it basically streamlines a lot of things for you. A use case here is from a company called Harris. They have bought a sizable, a multi-million-dollar worth of a Vblock. And basically what they do is they also bought this company called SignaCert, allowing a secure operation for the businesses. So they basically have a global trust repository. They segregate their data from the application environment, across those IOPS, and then run a firewall in the middle and provide services, security services to finance industry. Lots of, in the US, you always hear about big banks. You have Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and you have Goldman and so on and so forth. But there are actually 42,000 community banks, right? So Harris has a very good foothold in providing IT services in this financial community. So that's what they do over here, providing this type of services. Very quickly, again, talking about how to create a journey in the data center. You are quite familiar with co-location services, right? You probably already have co-location services that you do today. Managed and dedicated, so with co-location services, typically you get power, ping, and pipe, right? And again, if you look at it from dollars perspective, $600 per square feet is the type of IT expenses is what you're looking at. In the managed and dedicated environment is double that, right? Then we start talking about, Stephen Ramsey this morning was talking about taking ownership of an application, allowing you to take ownership of that application called UC, Unified Communication, and then add second C of collaboration. Later, in a multi-tenant environment, it would be HCS or hosted collaboration services. That's what would get you $2,000 per square feet. And finally, delivering the IAM, the shared space, and some of the other services that he talked about, you get full collaboration as a service. So the idea is to show you going from the same square foot, if you are just remaining at ping, power, and pipe stage, you are making around $600 per square foot, 4 to 5 times more, right? 4 to 5 times more if you complete this journey. A lot of my current customers are at this stage, right? Actively wanting to go to collaboration as a service. Finally, I just wanted to give you a couple of cases where trusted multi-tenancy has served the customer well, and wanted to just give you a quick review of what Amazon has done to the marketplace from making IT service into utility computing. Typically, your organization, a lot of our IT organizations build capacity in a stepwise fashion. However, demand is always in the S-curve, right? So sometimes you have more capacity that you don't use. Sometimes you have less capacity and you actually are having dissatisfied customer. What Amazon did was this. They turned both of this, capacity and utilization, into two S-curves and making them hug as closely as possible. There is a gap in the middle, right? There is this air gap as well. That air gap is there for the peaks. Right, so every time you need to, your employees would need to run type of IT services that would peak out of their norm, and as a service provider, as a provider of a type, you can never run out of a cloud, right? So this is the gap that you would always keep to make sure that you are serving to the capacity that is required. A quick finance discussion here. Amazon will sell you on-demand instance as a 8.5 cents per VM per hour, right? This is I've just taken small server and giving that example. Simple maths, 365 days in a year, 24 hours in a day, multiply that, and that server you have got for $744 per year, right? This is how the world knows cloud computing today, or infrastructure as a service in Amazon's terms, EC2, right? This is how the world knows on-demand computing. However, Amazon also offers something called reserved instances. Reserved instances, you get the same machine for 3 cents per VM per hour, right? Now, you have to predict 1 or 3 years in advance. If you predict 1 year in advance, you have a small set of fees to pay, but all in all, you get 34% discount if you use the same maths, right? If you predict 3 years in advance that this is the number of servers that you need in that particular year, you get half off, 49% off. So a lot of the time, these are the reserved instances. This is how businesses go and actually buy their servers. And then the final one I have is 3.1 cents per VM per hour without paying any setup fees, right? This is the spot instances, but you have to use those spot instances whenever they are available. If your workload is not finished and if those spot instances are going away, they are going away. You have to pay with the higher tariff, right? So this is how the pricing structure is offered on this multi-tenant environment. What is the net of that? Well, the net of that is when you are doing a multi-tenant environment and building capacity for yourself, you have to make sure that 60% of the capacity is sold already. So that's what Amazon does here. 60% of the capacity that Amazon has, it's already sold with those reserved instances. Only 10 to 20% of the capacity is true pay-per-use. So what does this mean? The world, due to marketing and other activities, knows cloud computing to be all pay-as-you-go, right? This obviously shows you that you can't have that point of view, or you can't have that operationalized with the smoothness that we see today. So this is 60% of the capacity is already built, already sold. 10 to 20% is true pay-as-you-go, and 10% is around the fact that I talked about that air gap, right? That's that capacity there. This is the spot instances that Amazon will sell you. The idea is, by talking to many customers, many service providers around the world, this area is about 12 to 18%, because your customer can never run out of, for you can never run out of a cloud for your customers, so you need to build that extra capacity all the time. So that magic number or range is 12 to 18%. An analogy here is an aeroplane, right? If an airline is running a plane, the plane is most profitable when it's up in the air with the passengers in the seats. If they have just only a handful of seats available, and if you're going from A to B, if you're going on a certain date, you get that seat for $200. Right next to you, the fellow passenger may have paid $2,000 for the same seat. But you don't get that seat for $200 if you just change one parameter, right? That's what is going on over here, right? If you need that instance, it's available from the European cloud on 20th of June from noon to 6 o'clock. You have it for that price. Past 6 o'clock, gone, right? So that's what we are talking about here. So again, just translating this to another customer of mine, Savis, basically has, they produce their results, and the idea here is that in the multi-tenant environment, from 0 to 15 million, they managed to achieve in about 12 or so months, like 12 to 14 months. So we saw Vivek Kundra's observations, and the way he has worked with a GSA, Army example that we saw. Now this is a commercial example to show you. Someone like Savis actually getting their revenue in a cloud environment. By the way, they report their 10Q, quarterly statement to SEC in 3 areas: co-location revenue, managed hosting, and network services. Cloud revenue actually gets under managed hosting. And in first quarter of 2012, they made $6 million. 2011, I'm sorry. If you go back to 2010, you can start seeing that in the first quarter they made 2.8, 3.5, 4, and 5, totaling to $15.3 million. Before that, they had that revenue stream did not exist. So, Terramark, you look at Terramark, they did 0 to 24 million in about 2 years. What is the result of this? Well, they got bought over by, Terramark got bought over by Verizon, Federal, and Savis got bought over by $2.5 billion by CenturyLink, right? Verizon was $1.4 billion. So IT hosters, right, they are the people who are getting cloud right, and telcos are buying these IT hosters to get into that business. One important fact I wanted to talk about from multi-tenancy perspective as well as VCE is day 2 of operation is very important. So I talked about, instead of connecting 300 brown boxes and getting your complex system together, you can actually have a faster time to value and time to market by getting Vblocks, right? This is another day 2 point over here is one, let me put it in a simple way, one throat to choke, right? You get a 24/7, 365 round the sun model with Vblock seamless support, right? What I'm saying here is all the way up until that VM is running, the virtualized environment, you get support, right? It's not that, look, if you're running an IT service, you run into a problem and you say, is it a storage issue, or is it a network issue, or is it a virtualization issue? And you don't have vendors doing this, right? Pointing fingers at each other about whose fault it is. So idea is that seamless support, one phone number to call, you call that issue in, it is figured out by VCE to resolve that issue, regardless of which which mother company, which parent company it actually is from. So we do that for you, in as much as we already have the understanding of innovations, technological innovations coming out of the roadmap. We also find bugs by doing the system testing, and we also own your issue from your perspective and not ask you to work with VMware individually compared to EMC and Cisco. So very powerful again. By the way, you saw pictures again earlier in the day about this DIG, or Design and Implementation Guide. Similar is available for Vblock, and it is, it's a validated solution. So above and beyond getting all the way up to compute as a service or infrastructure as a service, you get guides like how to run SAP. How would that look like? You get a proper architecture design deployment guide for that, as well as VDI, Exchange, multi-tenant environment, chargeback that would go together with multi-tenant environment. So all these, for example, for VDI, the stack is complete. You get completion of stack with VMview 4.5. Right. So test and validation is done at a solution layer, not just the platform. So you get end-to-end experience there, information there. By the way, if you work with us, this is a beginning of a cloud plan. What infrastructure as a service offers. I gave you 5 examples, but what are pertinent for your particular business? We can talk about that type of orchestration that would be required, and then may be internal, it may be internal guidance, but what sort of pricing, what sort of costs we are talking about, we can talk about that. Contract packages, service level agreement that you can offer to your constituents, what sort of differentiators that you can have, and support and services that would be required in order to make sure that your constituents are coming and getting that service from you. A complete plan would look like something like this. So for infrastructure as a service, if you have a public cloud or a virtual private cloud or private cloud, you can have different experience, user experience underpinned by orchestration. So public cloud, pretty much self-service model versus business critical workload for a private cloud, you would perhaps have a onboarding done by a program manager. Yeah, Savis is again, let me give you a Savis example. Savis does not have any customers who just swipe their credit card and then run on their cloud. Savis basically says VPDC or Virtual Private Data Center, aka Project Symphony, internal code name, only has customers who have record in Savis's CRM, Customer Relationship Management Database, right? So, customers that are running their workloads in Savis Cloud basically are rest assured that right next to, on the shared infrastructure, right next to their VM is not a VM that is run and paid for by a stolen credit card. For big enterprises, this is very important. So they basically, Savis says, oh, look, it will take us some time. It will take us 60 days for getting that requirement and getting that VM running. But we give you those 60 days for free, right? And then charge you in the VPDC environment. And they charge, they don't sell VM. They don't sell network, right? They don't sell bits and pieces, right? They sell virtual private data center that comes with the network attached with the correct QoS characteristics, and you get it for $250 to $500 per month. They call it essential, balance, and enterprise class. So, enterprise class, essential class is the small, balance is the medium. You can get a medium for $500 per month. So again, we can help you create a plan like that. So that's pretty much what I have today. Hopefully, I have proven to you that cloud is here and now. You also need to build cloud with a right platform. In this case, Vblock is what we talked about. And you need to understand your offers with your pricing guidance and understand how the economy would work for you. And you need to deploy it across the board for economies of the scale to work for you across the board, meaning the dev, the test, the QA, the pre-production, production, and DR. Now, that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I'll take them now. Otherwise, we can all grab a glass of beer. There we go. Thank you.